Welcome back one last time to my build of the Explorer Guitar Hero controller for the Great Guitar Build-Off 2021. Since we are now hours away from the end of the competition, this will be the last video of me getting all the way through to a completed guitar, and you guys can see what we ended up with. My whole design process through this has been to essentially build the guitar that I felt like I was playing when I was rocking out on Guitar Hero back in high school with my best friend. And I think I got that vision pretty well through to what you see at the end result. First, let's go back and see where we ended up with the last video when I was showing off that body. Let's see how we got there and then follow that through to a completed guitar. Here we go. Okay, so obviously the first step is to take that template that we had back in episode 1, which feels like forever ago because it's been about 4 months, and trace that onto my body blank, get that cut out on the bandsaw, which went fairly smoothly. No real issues there. There were a couple of tight curves in it that I had to take in a couple of cuts, but that's to be expected with something that's got such a sharp kind of cutaway into the neck shape, which is the only real difference that I had between a standard Explorer body and the one that I put together, besides the scaling, of course. After that, we went and started doing some routing with that template to get it a little closer to shape. Starting with the template on bottom, then took that template off to get it routed up to about the halfway mark. Once we got it to there, we just flipped the body over and used the already routed portion with a top bearing bit to get the rest of the body all routed together. So all in all, it took 3 passes, but part of that's just because I don't trust routers, and the longer the bit, the more dangerous the darn thing is. There may come a day when I trust routers, but I haven't gotten there yet. I, in fact, ended up buying a new plunge router during the course of this build because the one I had been using to do interior cavities was an old laminate router that I just didn't trust. Then we did some drilling there with the Forstner bits to get the neck pocket kind of sorted out so that I could start getting that roughed in. I didn't quite get it to final depth yet because I wasn't sure once I inset the bridge where I would want that to be or what the break angle was going to be yet. I did that by kind of measuring by hand with some goodies and a little bit of trig to see what we ended up with. Chiseled out a little bit of the excess so that I wouldn't have to route quite so much once I got in there. And there's that laminate router, which I definitely replaced because that thing only has 1 speed, death, and it doesn't plunge, so you have to put it in while it's on. And I did have an incident where it grabbed a template on the way in and chipped the heck out of it, so I traded that in before long. After that, I did a bevel chamfer on the edges of the body. I just kind of progressively worked my way up by raising that bit as I go until I'm happy with it, and it ended up being just the right bit of chamfer because it fits the pickup mount perfectly before it hits the edge. And then, something I probably should have done before I chamfered the edge, I went in and kind of did that little inset where I've got the control knobs, which is where the buttons on the controller are, also inset, to give it that same kind of feel. I started out after getting that trying to bevel the edges with a chisel by hand. Didn't end up happy with the way that worked, so I tried a few things and struggled with it for a while. Sanding and scraping with scrapers, which ended up being the best bet, although my scrapers definitely need to be sharpened at this point. And ended up with a much shallower angle than I was anticipating, so I was kind of wanting a 45 degree, but it worked out pretty well. And then doing the cavity routing with that lovely new plunge router. It's a pretty intro baseline one, but it's a Ryobi, but boy, it was miles better than that laminate I was using that just felt like I was flirting with death every time I used it. At least with this thing, I'm just kind of winking across the room at death. And then after the pickup routing, we did the bridge through routing for the trem. And then of course the back for that trim, where those springs and everything are gonna go. And then insetting the bridge down onto the body a little bit deeper, partially just to have another bit of chamfered edges besides the exterior and besides the control cavity, kind of give it a little bit of unity. And then routing in a little bit for where the cover plates were going to go, with some homemade templates for those. Once I did that, of course I had to make the cavity covers. So I had some pickguard material. I wanted to match the pickguard, the faux pickguard on the front with the cavity covers on the back, so I used the same material for both. And then, just to be cheeky, took some resin that I'd already cured, cut it into some inlay shapes that I liked for the faux start and back buttons, and inlaid those. And then on to painting and finishing. Started with a base coat of white, did a few of those. I think I ended up with 4 coats of that. Then we went on to the pearl on top of that, which was kind of translucent, so I did that base coat so it wouldn't just show the wood underneath. Of course I did some green filler before I started. I ended up with about 5 coats of green filler because it just never quite seemed to fill that ash until I got to that point, and even then I still had a couple places that were almost perfect. I definitely did quite a few coats of that pearl because I really wanted that to be popping. And ran out right at the end. Then I did a couple of coats worth of a hot rod sparkle on top. That didn't last quite as long as I thought it was going to. I knew I was going to cut that pretty heavily with some thinner and things to get it to spread. But even so, I underestimated how much of it I was going to need. So I got 3-ish coats, and that was about it. And then on to lacquer. Because my initial coat of paint got a little more texture in it than I would like because it wasn't thin enough, I ended up with 15 coats of lacquer, so I would know that I would have enough to be able to sand back flat and get a nice finish, and it worked out great. And then while I was waiting for that to cure, for a week, I went ahead and started doing some hardware on the neck. When the body was finally done, we went and did wet sanding up to 3000 grit there, which was an easier process than I was anticipating. Trick from the automotive industry: soak that sandpaper overnight and it doesn't pick up a darn thing. Then we went to some buffing. I used some white jeweler's rouge on there, very gently, kind of medium-low pressure on that, and buffed up the whole body. Got a nice kind of mirror polish on it there. Then I started fitting the hardware on the body. Made a little cutout on the faux pick guard so that the pickup mounting hardware would actually fit into it just flush, which worked out beautifully. Glued the neck in. Now that I'd finalized the brake angle and everything, which I think was only about a 1/64 of an inch difference between the front and back of the neck cavity, since that bridge was inset so low. Then it's time to do all the fretwork. Got the truss rod straightened out so the neck was good to go there. Marked all my frets and leveled those. Crowned all the frets after that. Beveled the ends of the frets. This is honestly one of my favorite parts of working on guitars. Something very cathartic about making your frets all perfect. Went in after that with some fret erasers, medium fine and super fine grits. Thank you, Crimson Guitars. And once I got past that superfine, I went in and buffed those up again with some white jeweler's rouge on a Dremel to get a very nice mirror polish on the top. Probably won't last long once I start playing it, but it looks darn good for a completed build. And then, let's look at the final product. One quick addendum, since you didn't get to see me wire the electronics, because my phone, which I used to record, was being used to look at wiring diagrams, I figured I'd give you a quick run through on that before we end this off. Let's see, we've got this lovely guitar here. We've got, the knobs are actually push-pull knobs. The volume knob is set up as a coil split so that I can get single or humbucker tones out of that. And the tone knob is actually set up as a straight bypass to bypass these two controls and go straight from the pickup to the jack, just to give it a little extra brightness, and because there's not a whole lot else you can do with two push-pulls when you only have one pickup. But that's kind of giving you the idea of what we did there. I wanted to have the two knobs do something as push-pulls because since they're mimicking buttons on a controller, I had to do push-pull knobs. I mean, come on. Anyway, wanted to let you in on that before we wrapped up the video, just so you got a full experience of what's going on with this thing. Thanks. And there we have it. One completed Guitar Hero-esque Explorer Lite. A little bit slimmer body, a little bit flatter neck, and a little bit more awesome as far as I'm concerned. All in all, the build went pretty smoothly. Definitely had a few kinks that I managed to work around or work through. Learned quite a few things I'm going to be taking into my next build, and the one after that, and the one after that. But I'm glad I got to be part of this competition. Definitely going to be joining again next year, and hopefully I'll become up with something even more awesome than this. So in the very probable likelihood that I don't win this year, I'm going to be coming for that winner next year. So y'all look out. Thank you very much for watching my series. Hopefully we'll have some more fun in the future with similar video builds. Thanks.